Hi, greetings, everybody. Here we are for the Power of Stupidity Part 2. And this looks a lot shorter than the first one. Um, so we're going to get to the Part 3 also, the Stupidity of Power. Um, this is a reading of Giancarlo Livragi's. Um, there's a book that he wrote on stupidity um, that was mainly based on the work of a guy named Carlos Sequoia, who anyway, it's from September of 1997. After 15 months, my little essay on stupidity seems to be quite alive on the net. I'm still receiving mail from different corners of the world, and it's being mirrored, linked, or quoted in a number of places. I wonder if I'm the first one who's read it out loud. The resulting dialogue made me discover some very interesting people and some remarkable websites I didn't know. That was in 1997. As I take another look at this 9 years later, there's still a fair amount of debate on the subject, and there are lots of new facts confirming the power of stupidity. We're going to need to look at Dunning-Kruger a little bit too, if there's time. Um, this is pretty short. Questions and comments from several people led me to think a little more about this intriguing and terrifying subject. Here is the humble result of those meditations. Is the Sequoia definition true? This can be about a criterion based on an essay by Carlos Sequoia that I found particularly useful in studying the power of stupidity, or it can apply to any other theory or definition on any subject. In my early stages of learning, I was lucky enough to have teachers who set a few principles that many years later remain firm in my mind. One of those philosophical principles is that there is no such thing as absolute truth. A true theory is simply the most convenient under the circumstances, the one that best explains and interprets what we're studying. I don't know which is the best absolute definition of stupidity, or even if there is one that makes any sense. I'm not aware of any really effective definition of intelligence either. What makes an effect-based approach interesting and useful for the definition of stupidity or intelligence is that it's not based on an abstract concept but on results. A person or behavior is stupid or intelligent depending on what happened. This has two advantages. The first is that it defines a person and that person's behavior as stupid or intelligent, or maybe hapless or abandoned, on the basis of facts, or at least on our understanding and definition of facts. The second, even more important, is that it leads us to concentrate on the vital factor, not stupidity per se, but the damage that it causes. There can be countless types of behavior that are or appear stupid but are harmless. They come up close to neutral in the Cartesian coordinates, and that is indeed where they belong. For instance, sharing silly fun with friends and having a good laugh may be seen as stupid by outsiders, but when measured by results such as behavior is likely to be classified as intelligent, which indeed it is, as long as the fun shared by the people being amused is more than the annoyance or boredom caused to bystanders. Fuck the bystanders. as long as the fun shared by the people being amused is fun and everybody's like being amused and generally, the intelligence practical advantage of such behavior is limited to a moment of good humor, but quite often it can lead to more relevant effects by sparking up cooperation ideas in ways that would not be possible in a boring environment. Silly can be remarkably intelligent, while serious can be awfully stupid, quite apart from the fact that innovative thinking is often seen as silly by people who don't understand it. This leads to an important subject, the relevance of nonlinear thinking as well as emotion and humor in all mental processes, and especially in innovation. To discuss that in a meaningful way, I would need much more space than I have here. Let me just say the distinction of right and left mind may be interested in clinical experiments, but in my view should be avoided in the general observation of human behavior because the structure of thinking is not as simple as that. And in any case, the various processes of perception and thought always work together and are better understood as a whole than as the sum of separate functions. I don't have enough water. I don't have any water now. I don't know how much if I'm going to get all the way through this without drying up. 3 corollaries. While I was working on the first draft of The Power of Stupidity, I developed what came to my mind as the first literary corollary. Then I realized I couldn't call it first because I had only one. But my original feeling was right. I've since discovered that there are at least 3. Here they are. First is, in each of us, there is a factor of stupidity which is always larger than we suppose. This is similar to the Dunning-Kruger finding that stupid people tend to overestimate their own competence and underestimate the competence of people who disagree with them. Second corollary is when the stupidity of one person combines with the stupidity of others, the impact grows geometrically, i.e. by multiplication, not addition of the individual stupidity factors. This is synergy, simple synergy of the symbiosis of stupidity. It seems to be a generally accepted concept that the sum of a network increases as the square of the number of members. And it seems quite obvious that the same criterion applies to the combination of stupidity factors in individual people. This can help to explain the well-known fact that crowds as a whole are much more stupid than any individual person in the crowd. This is my 13th corollary to the Murphy's Law was that the probability of failure of any software package increases exponentially with the it's directly proportional to the number of Microsoft software engineers that were assigned to the development project. The third corollary is this combination of intelligence in different people is more difficult than the combination of stupidity. This isn't only because the power of stupidity is generally underestimated. Its consequences are often unpredictable. There are multiple and complicated causes of this problem. Stupidity is brainless. It doesn't need to think, get organized, or plan ahead to generate a combined effect. The transfer and combination of intelligence is a much more complex process. There was an interesting little thing about bumblebees that had learned how to get food by pulling on a string, and then when the bee learned, it taught the other bees, and then the whole hive learned how to get the food by pulling on the string. That's that Ken Kai's 100th monkey thing. Stupid people can combine instantly into a super stupid group or mass. Wow, we have mob, oh boy. I was there once when it happened, when the Sly Stone canceled the free concert in Grant Park in Chicago. I was right there when it jumped off, and it's just amazing how 100,000 people can instantly turn stupid, and just start stampeding. Stupid people can combine instantly into a super stupid group or mass, while intelligent people are effective as a group only when they know each other well and are experienced in working together. The creation of well-tuned groups of people sharing intelligence can generate fairly powerful anti-stupidity forces. But unlike stupidity bundling, they need organized planning and upkeep, and could lose a large part of their effectiveness by the infiltration of stupid people or unexpected bursts of stupidity in otherwise intelligent people. Shit happens. Shit didn't happen, life would be boring. In some situations, these dangers can be partly offset, if not totally controlled, by being aware of the potential problem before anything goes wrong and having backup intelligence in the group and in whatever equipment is being used to fill the gaps and correct the mistakes before the damage becomes too serious. Any good skipper of a sailboat knows what I mean. So does any other person that has experience of an environment where the cause-effect process is bluntly direct and tangible. You learn that fast in places like factories and farms. And on that note, I'm losing it. I need to do some like mouth therapy so I can keep talking. This pollen season has been pretty easy, actually. Not really terrible. I mean, I'm usually like Oh my, just from here up, like I just can't hardly breathe. But this thing got to come out. It's bothering me too much and too often. Where were we? Communities with a high intelligence factor are likely to have greater potential for long-term survival, but for that to be effective, we must avoid the potentially devastating short-term impact of shared stupidity, which unfortunately can cause major damage to large numbers of non-stupid people before it self-destructs. Another dangerous element in the question is that the machinery of power tends to place at the top of the pyramid people who care more about their own advantage and the interests of restricted groups than about the well-being of everyone else. And they in turn tend to favor and protect stupidity and keep true intelligence out of their way as much as they can. That is, I think, an important subject per se. Maybe one day I shall try to comment on it. And so I did 6 years after I first wrote this for article in The Stupidity of Power, which we'll read next because this is pretty short. This is almost done. Um, Stupidity in biology. In a basic biological environment, the stupidity problem doesn't exist. The process is based on the production of an extremely large number of dumb mutants. Only very few, the fittest, survive, and that's it. From that point of view, what we see as catastrophe is just another variation in the natural course of events. Destructive fires are understood by botanists as a necessary, indeed desirable, step in the evolution of a forest. Millions of living creatures that die in the process may disagree, but their opinion is irrelevant. In that perspective, solutions are simple and very effective. If there are too many people, all we need is another plague, or any mass slaughter device that will not interfere too much with the overall environment. That can kill 90% of the population. Thank you, Fukushima. The surviving 10%, as soon as they get over the shock, are likely to find the resulting environment quite agreeable. They are also likely to be genetically similar, share specific traits of appearance and attitude. If they all had green hair, pink eyes, and like rainy weather, they would soon come to consider the extinct people with any other hair color or eye color, as well as people that like sunny weather, as rather quaint and inferior. Their moisture-resistant history books would treat most of us as we treat the Neanderthals. The destruction or sterilization of our planet by man-made nuclear or chemical power, or by collision with some wandering rock, would be an irrelevant detail in a cosmic perspective. This is important to remember. This is what keeps smart people from being stupid. They've got a real good sense of the oneness of everything and their just minuscule presence within all of it. Um, and how incredibly like swiftly shit can squash you with like no malice aforethought and no remorse. The destruction or sterilization, and if it happened before the development of space travel and colonization, the disappearance of our species along with the rest of the terrestrial biosphere wouldn't cause much of a stir even in our galaxy. But in the particular biological environment, I don't know about that because I have a feeling this is like one of the ancient seats of empire. That the humans have been around for a long time, and so has Earth, and civilization has risen and fallen on this planet many times. Um, but in a particular biological environment that is set by certain species, such as ours, the system is based on the assumption that the environment can and should be controlled. Well, that's you can keep a smaller you know uh, the bigger the system, the harder it is to keep order within it. Balanced homeostasis within the system, um, by artificial means. Just the physics of matter and energy transformations just kind of work themselves out into a balance, and so that there's things, the changes are cyclical. Um, you want to, you want to refrigerate your, you want to treat your air and your water and everything in a closed system, and not worry. Never mind. I'm not in the right frame of mind to even go there right now. Um, been too long since I actually studied it. Okay, but in the particular biological environment that is set by certain species, such as ours, the system is based on the assumption that the environment can and should be controlled, and that each individual in our species and in other species that we protect should be able to live longer and more pleasantly than he or she would in an uncontrolled environment. This needs a particular breed of organized intelligence. Therefore, stupidity in this stage of type of biological development is extremely dangerous. Again, thank you, Fukushima. Um, stupidity, nuclear tea kettle, boiling water with a giant nuclear pile is just plain stupid to begin with. And then putting the thing on a fault line right next to the ocean is even more stupid. Therefore, it's extremely dangerous. As we are human, that's what we need to worry about. I mean, an extinction event, and the planetary management is going to need to do some repair work, or most of us are dead. Plain and simple. It's just the way the physics works. Stupidity in the millennium. There are very few things in this world that can be predicted as precisely as the end of the 20th century. It will happen at exactly 0 hours, 0 minutes, 0 seconds of January 1st, 2001. And we have enough shared conventional definitions to set our clocks and watches in each of the time zones as precisely as we need to pop the cork or use a sophisticated timer. But there is a surprisingly large number of people who think the millennium will end at midnight on December 31st, 1999. Well, of course, um, we shall enter year 2000, but we shall still be in the 20th century for another year. I know lots of bright and well-educated people who took a while to adjust to that. Took a while to adjust that notion. They scratch their heads and eventually, only half convinced, they mumble something like, "Maybe you're right. I guess there never was a year zero." Is that stupid? Maybe not, or not much, because it's unlikely to cause any major harm. Could encourage us to refresh our arithmetic, and may lead us to celebrate twice. I think that's what happened. If that doesn't cause too many accidents, it could mean people having twice the fun, merchants making money twice, and at the end of the story, it could turn out to be quite harmless. A few more comments after the fact are published in an article, The Millennium in the Bubble. This is something else he wrote. But there is a problem that may hit us quite severely at the end of 1999, and that is how clocks are set in computerized systems. This all turned out to be a whole load of crap, too, after they spent like a lot of money to fix it. I've heard many dumb comments on the subject, such as, my Mac will adjust to your year 2000 and your PC won't. And what's all the fuss about? The clock of my computer will handle the 2000 figure. It seems nearly impossible to make people stop and think about broader implications in their own personal computer. I don't want to get into technicalities, that's not my field, and I leave it to the expert. There is a lot of debate about myths and realities, and there are several different opinions on this matter. It could be debated, but time is running out. It really came down to coding, um, and the field lengths, and determining, teaching the computer how to decide which century, in a uh, two-digit year. It was like, trying to decide whether it was 1916 or 2016 that the computer was supposed to be reading. And it's about field size and the coding forms. It's a two fields, most of it, most of it was just, keeping the clock synced and working out that identifier of which century um, they're referring to in a two-digit date. But most of the digits, a lot of the recoding work was in extending the the field size on the date field to have a 4-digit year, so that the computer didn't have to try and decide which year it was, because computers aren't real bright. Yes, no, maybe, it's a yes, no, or maybe, and it can run through a few maybes until it's got to say yes or no. Um, so anyway, this was what, 1997 was kind of a heavy year for them. All the coding. Um, a lot of the coding had to be, was Office 97, Windows 95, and Office 97, and Windows 98 SE and T4 drivers releases. Those are the three major moments in at least PC software upgrading for the Y2K. It was when those three items were released, and it was no big thing. A lot of money got spent though. A lot of money got spent doing it. Um, yeah, this was all stuff that didn't happen. In any case, there seems to be enough old software around in huge systems or in small vital devices to be a serious problem for lots of people who have nothing to do with computers. It really came down to like the 2-digit versus 4-digit date field, because the computer is too stupid to make the decision of whether it was 2016 or 1916 that the machine was supposed to know. A friend of mine who is very competent and bright EDP expert says your coffee machine, your alarm clock, and your video recorder are unlikely to have date tantrums. Your PC may work well enough through the turn of the century as it is, or with a few minor adjustments, but in spite of the Otis disclaimer, in some part of the world, you should be careful before you take an elevator on January 1st, 2000. Um, I don't think we're headed for doomsday. I guess in the next couple of years, solutions will be found. But suppose just one little bit of something in one single system or piece of equipment is not fixed and tested properly ahead of time. I suppose it's an air traffic controller, a hospital, or the aiming device of a weapon. Can we really trust all the people concerned in every corner of the planet to do their homework properly? Big or small as the problem may be, the stupidity lies in its predictability. The Gregorian calendar was set 415 years ago, long before any of the modern devices, electronic or other, were conceived. How could anyone, no matter how long ago, make a computer, a piece of software, anything containing a time program, without considering that there would certainly be a problem if it couldn't handle year digits beyond 99? 2 years from the deadline, they're still fussing about how to untangle the messages, extend the field size to 4-year digits, 4-digit year. 4 digits for the year was all mainly what they did. In 1999, the Millennium Bug, after being ignored for many years, turned into a last-minute frenzy in which its potential effects were largely overestimated. Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. Let's move off of that. We could forget electronics and talk about many other things. Take pensions. In my country, pension schemes are government-controlled and compulsory. Several decades ago, it was abundantly clear that the population would get older and that there would be a serious problem. Nobody did anything about it. Quite to the contrary, they did a number of things to make it worse. Early pensions, special favors to people that neither deserved them or needed them, etc., on a monstrously wide scale. And now they are still quarreling about how to fix the problem. And the environment, the population exposure, the use of fossil energy, the dumb hierarchic rigidity of private and public organizations, including schools, in a world of increasing turbulence and complexity. The information tech society, the networked world, being potentially a powerful tool for the underprivileged, but driven by fatware in the opposite direction. This is true. But I still see it being a very powerful tool of the underprivileged, particularly the indigenous people of the world, and the solidarity that it brings them in the global electronic village. A lot of the Standing Rock confrontation, no DAP confrontation, huge social networking phenomenon that hasn't really died down. And it really didn't start there, because like you had the what do they call? What's the name of those people? The people down in the Mato Grosso in Brazil with the dam. It was a year or two before Standing Rock started. The blind are leading the blind. Stupidity is running the world, and Twitler is in the lighthouse. For anyone looking at us from outer space, this could be extremely funny, but somehow it doesn't make me laugh. Okay, this is probably only about 20 minutes so far, 26 minutes. Yeah, let's take a look at the power of stupidity, or stupidity of power. See how long that is. Oh, this is much shorter than any of the others, so we'll do it all in one. So this is part 3 of the power of stupidity. And this part's called the stupidity of power. Okay. Again, this is Giancarlo Livraggi's Italian guy. He wrote the first draft of this paper in October 1997. It remained unfinished for over 4 years. I was running into the same sort of problem that Walter Pitkin faced in 1934 when he published his Introduction to the History of Human Stupidity. Every time I went to work on it, there were several examples of the stupidity of power in the events of the day or in some part of recent or remote history. Concentrating on any of those examples meant getting into the awesome complications of serious and tragic events, or circumstances that are very likely to lead to disaster and are not being effectively managed ahead of time. Too complex to be discussed effectively in what must be a short document. Too difficult to be explained without deep studies that would take years. So I decided to forget the examples and facts and stay with the general theory, which I hope is basically simple and clear, though unfortunately doesn't offer any easy solution. The essence of stupidology is an attempt to explain why things don't work, and how much of that is due to human stupidity, which is the cause of most of our problems. And even when the cause is not stupidity, we make the consequences much worse by being stupid in how we react or try to fix the problem. Essentially, this analysis is diagnostic, not therapeutic. The idea is that if we understand how stupidity works, we may be able to control its effects a little better. It's impossible to defeat it altogether because it's part of human nature. But its effects can be significantly reduced by knowing it's there and understanding how it works, and thus not being caught by total surprise. I discuss this to a limited extent in The Power of Stupidity. As all stupidologists know, the subject is so vast that such short comments could only scratch the surface. But if I've been able to prompt readers to think about it, that is the biggest achievement I could possibly imagine. The stupidity of every single human being is a large enough problem, but the picture changes when we consider the stupidity of people who have power. That is, control over the destiny of other people. As in the first two parts, I shall continue to follow the concept of defining stupidity, intelligence, etc., by the effects of human behavior. This seems kind of simple, but I mean oversimple. And he says it himself that you don't just have that intelligent action leads to beneficial outcome, and stupid action leads to harmful outcome. Um, that's a little oversimplified because there's predation to consider, um, and philanthropy, um, among other things. As in the first two parts, I'll continue. Oh yeah, okay. That changes one person. When the one person or a small group of people can influence the life and well-being of many more. That changes the cause and relations, effect relations in the system. Power, large and small. This also tells me that John Stuart Mill on liberty is something to read. That's relevant to the idea that an individual or a small group of people can influence the life and well-being of many more. He goes into that pretty deeply in that essay. Power, large and small. Power is everywhere. We are all subject to someone else's power, and except perhaps in the case of extreme slavery, we all exert power on others. Personally, I loathe the concept, but it's part of life. Parents have or are supposed to have power over their children, but children have a great deal of power over their parents, which they often use quite ruthlessly. We may be owners of cats and dogs or horses or hamsters, elephants or camels, sailboats or cars, phones or computer, but quite often we're subject to their power, especially them cats and dogs. Horses actually are worse than the cats and dogs um, in terms of them exerting power over you. So it's a lot of work to just keep them damn things fed. Um, it would be far too complicated for the sake of this subject to get into the intricacy of human relations. Therefore, I shall concentrate on the most obvious cases of power, those situations where someone has a defined role of authority over a large or small number of people. In theory, we all tend to agree that there should be as little as power as possible, and that people in power should be subject controlled by the rest of the people. We call that democracy, or in organizations we call it leadership, motivation, distributed responsibility sharing, and personal empowerment, as opposed to authority, bureaucracy, centralization, or formal discipline. But there are relatively few people who want real freedom. Responsibility is a burden. It's quite convenient to be followers. Psychophantic, simpering psychophantic sociopaths. To let rulers, bosses, opinion leaders, gurus of all sorts, identity politics, movie stars and television personalities set the pace and do the thinking and put the blame on them if we're unhappy. Caitlyn Jenner comes to mind. On the other hand, oh, she doesn't speak for me. So what? You don't speak for me either. On the other hand, there is a somewhat special breed of people who enjoy power. Caitlyn Jenner comes to mind. Because they're so dedicated to substantial effort and sacrifice needed to gain power, large power, they prevail. Never mind. We must assume that the general concept applies. There are just as many stupid people in power as there are in the rest of humanity. And there are always many more than we think. But two things are different: the relationship and the attitude. The power of power. People in power are more powerful than other people. That isn't as obvious as it sounds. One might argue that this is not always so. There are apparently powerful people with real influence than some who are much less visible. But for the sake of this discussion, we must stay away from that problem. Why? It's the guys behind the curtain that are a bigger problem. Buffoons like Trump are just puppets on strings that the real power brokers are manipulating. Um, but for the sake of this discussion, yeah, because it gets into things, conspiracy theory and things that are just totally obfuscated by tons of disinformation that all sides, all interested parties have been pumping out for years about it. Regardless of how and why actual power is held and used, this is about real power. That uneven relationship caused by the fact that some people have a stronger influence on circumstances than others, and in many situations, a few people can do good or harm to many. Like having a malignant narcissist as the chief executive officer of the United States of America Incorporated. Yeah. A basic and quite obvious criterion is that the effect of behavior must be measured not by the yardstick of whoever does something, but from the other end, the point of view of whoever is subject to the effects of that person's acts or lack of action. That's overwhelming what that pen has done, and he promised to do it. Boy, he says I'm going to do this, but he's not doing any. It's totally blowing in the face of everybody. Oh boy. Um, the clear result of this basic concept is a drastic shift in the Cartesian coordinates. See Part 1. The harm or good is much larger depending on the number of people involved in the impact of the actions and decisions. If a person in an equal relationship gains as much personal advantage as the damage it causes to someone else, the system as a whole remains balanced, as observed in the first of these articles. But it's obviously not so when there is a difference in power. In theory, we could assume that as the percentage of intelligent or stupid people is the same, the effect of power will be balanced. But when power deals with large numbers of people, the one-to-one relationship is lost. Pardon me. Yeah, this is not my lungs. This is all right from here up. From here to here. It's mostly allergy. I mean, there's a certain amount of pollution and a certain amount of self-pollution from smoking and cutting stone without a mask. But it's mostly allergy. How do people gain power? By spending millions of dollars and running for president. But then you got to have people in power giving them the millions of dollars to spend. Sometimes by not even trying. They're entrusted by other people because other people trust them. They have natural leadership and a sense of responsibility. This process, more often than not, produces intelligent power, a situation in which chosen leaders do good for themselves and a lot more for others. Sometimes it can lead to deliberate sacrifice when people do harm to themselves for the benefit of others. If that is done intentionally, it doesn't fall into the hapless category because of the moral good, including self-perception and the approval of others, gained by the person who deliberately places common good over private interest. But there are much fewer examples of such intelligent power than we all would like to see. Why? Money, for one. The reason is that there is competition for power. And the other is that the righteous people won't kill. There's a line that they'll draw in how they're going to respond to people trying to impose their will on them without their consent. The more righteous a person is, the less likely they are to respond violently to anything, and either will retreat or just going to keep being as diplomatic as they can until they have to retreat or the other side kills them. People who have agreed. Oh, wait a minute. People who don't seek power per se but are more concentrated on doing good for others have less time and energy to spend on gaining more power or even holding on to what they have. People who have agreed for power, regardless of its impact on society, concentrate on the struggle for power. Most individuals are placed somewhere between the two extremes of that spectrum, with many different shades and nuances, but the power-mongering element is the most aggressive in the power game and therefore it gains more power. Even people with the most generous initial motivation can be forced over time to dedicate more energy to maintaining or increasing power to the point of losing sight of their original objectives. Another element that makes things worse is megalomania. Power is an addictive drug. People in power are often led to believe that because they have power, they are better, smarter, wiser than ordinary people. They are also surrounded by psychopaths, followers, and exploiters, enhancing that delusion. Power is sexy. That isn't just a manner of speech. There is an instinct in the nature of our species that makes powerful people, or people who appear to be powerful, sexually attractive. Although most those people playing the power game are too busy with it to be able to have any decent sex or to care about emotion, affection, and love. Free Melania. People who have or seek power are just as stupid or intelligent as any average person. They're often quite clever, astute, and mischievous. But if we follow the method of measuring intelligence and stupidity by the effective behavior and not motive or technique, the result is a definite shift, as shown in this graph, where the red arrow is the power factor. There is a general deterioration in the system with a shift from intelligence to stupidity. A careful reader may notice that the arrow is on the side. This is to allow for the fact that a few people, those in power in their entourage, gain some advantages, and therefore the shift in the center is not from the center of the intelligent area to that of the stupid, but it leans on the lower right side, crossing the harmful fourth quadrant. A few more graphs showing blah 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 blah. That's in a footnote in the Semper file. Those are kind of hard to show and talk about. The pursuit of power increases the stupidity factor. The impact can be relatively large or small depending on the amount of power. Tweet or nuclear football. Pew, pew, pew. The importance of matter is influenced by power and the number of people subject to its effect and on the intensity of the power struggle. Who's crazier leader, Kim Il-jong or Donald Trump? Um, Boy, they should make them, if they want to do, let them duke it out. Let the two of them duke it out. Or have a golf game. This is the most relevant, if not the only exception to a general principle explained in the first part of The Power of Stupidity. It remains true that a person's stupidity is independent of any other characteristic of that person. But power as a system is much more stupid than any single ordinary person can be. The problem is that power can be limited, controlled, scrutinized, and conditioned, but not eliminated altogether. Humanity needs leaders. Organizations need people who take responsibilities, and these people must have some power to perform their role. So we've got to live with power and its stupidity. But that doesn't mean that we must accept it, tolerate it, or support it. Power should not be admired, trusted, or even respected unless it shows practical intelligence in what it does to us and to the world. Should I repeat that? I probably should. I probably need to. That we just probably need to take that out and make a meme from that. Let's repeat that. Power should not be admired, trusted, or even respected unless it shows practical intelligence in what it does to us and to the world. We have not seen that in Donald Trump. We won't see that in Donald Trump. We will not see that in any of his administration. These people are white nationalists, and they're extreme. They're religious extremists, and we're fucked if we let them carry out their agenda. As far as I can see, there is no. This is back to the reading. As far as I can see, there is no universal or standard solution to this problem, but we're halfway there if we are aware of it. And if we never allow ourselves to be blinded or seduced by the treacherous glitter of power, or the awe, or the shock and awe of giant bombs going off. Okay, well, that's that. That's 44 minutes of this. This is pretty, that's enough to bother the people that are like assigned to do this. But, if they're not getting paid, the people that are stalking me, if they're not getting paid to do it, they really need some psychiatric help. the talk about me's quieted down on both sides since I'm not responding, but it's still there. They're still tracking me, and um, it's there. And then there's people that are infiltrated all over Facebook that are trolling people passive aggressively in the groups, ready to fuck with them, report them, for, provoke them into saying something they can report. Organized stupidity. That's scary. This organized cyberbullying. It's just gang stupidity. Well, anyway, thanks for watching. Happy day. Bye.